Tonight we're talking about Israel's failed military strategy in Gaza, poison gas used to kill Israeli hostages, and of course, the Houthi effect on the Red Sea. Let's get to it.
Trust nothing. No laws. Free your mind. Everything is propaganda. Everything is propaganda. Everything is propaganda. So why not choose your own?
Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is this article in Haaretz. It's an analysis by somebody named Yossi Melman, and the headline is, Why Israel's Political and Military Leaders Want a Perpetual War. Many of the country's decision makers appear enamored of a situation in which the Israel-Hamas war continues with no end in sight. This is why it could benefit them. Now we're going to go ahead and just read these tweets by a journalist with the Electronic Intifada who summarizes the article. He says, the Israeli military efforts to rescue the hostages have failed. The theory embraced by Halevi, Bar, and Gallant, members of the war cabinet, that only military pressure can bring about the hostages' release has not proven itself. Of the 268 hostages, 121 were freed in exchange for a ceasefire and Israel's release of terrorists. The promise to eliminate Hamas's leadership in Gaza and abroad has also shown to be arrogant. So basically what is being said here is that Israel's strategy to try and rescue the hostages have failed. The only success in releasing the hostages safely and securely has been through actual negotiations and deals with Hamas. The ceasefire exchange was the only method in which hostages were released and freed. Yet Israel insists on, no, we are going to free them militarily. That's been a failure. He goes on, he continues, strategically, Israel is losing the war. It has not managed, as Netanyahu and Gallant had promised, to bring about the collapse of Hamas and is now facing a war of attrition. Statements made both before and during the war that Israel can fight simultaneously on multiple fronts are being proven to be vain boasting. Israel is perceived as a weak country with 150,000 of its citizens internally displaced refugees. Ironic, isn't it? And then in the last tweet he says, what stands out is a lack of political courage that would lead to the conclusion that it would be better to declare limited achievements now and cut our losses. Okay, so what can we make of this? You have a journalist writing openly in Israel months now into the war, basically suggesting that, hey, our strategy has failed, that we have hundreds of thousands of people that can't live in the north because of the war with Hezbollah that could escalate further. Those people are not working. A lot of money is being spent to relocate those people. We're not freeing more hostages. In fact, we're killing more hostages by accident, which we'll get to by accident. There's some speculation that actually it's the Hannibal Directive, which I'm actually going to make a video about, but I won't talk too much about it tonight. But basically now, internally within Israel, questions are being raised. People are starting to criticize Netanyahu and the war cabinet strategy, saying, what are we achieving? We're ruining our reputation on the world stage. We're not actually showing strength. We're showing weakness. We're committing genocide. People are taking us to court for genocide. What are we achieving? What are we doing? This isn't making sense. Why not just have the courage to engage in a dialogue and strike a deal? That would end the war. That would eliminate the economic pressure. That would be able to send people back to their homes in the north. That would end the crisis in the Red Sea. That would just make life a lot easier. And the achievements they could say is, well, we destroyed Gaza. Is that not enough? Apparently not. Not for the freak right-wing extremists in Netanyahu's government. Moving on. Now, there's debate over how many Israeli soldiers have actually been killed. The Israelis claim that only about 200 have been killed, but we know that potentially thousands have at least have been wounded. But they released more information. This is also in Haaretz. The Israeli army releases names of 4 soldiers killed in the past day. They say 3 of the soldiers were killed in the Gaza Strip, and the 4th was killed in a traffic accident while on duty. 17 soldiers were also wounded fighting in the Gaza Strip. So it seems daily now there are more and more Israelis being either killed or wounded. Some of these wounds are quite serious. People are losing their arms, their eyes. It's not pretty. Okay, people are in tanks getting hit by rockets. Soldiers are being sniped on rooftops. They're being ambushed. So this is what many people speculate, including people like Scott Ritter, military analysts. They say that this was Hamas's plan all along because they can't fight Israel one-on-one, head-to-head in a traditional sense. So the only way they can fight is basically through guerrilla warfare. Now, Israel has done a good job of basically destroying everything, but even that is not enough with all their tanks and all the destruction to protect their soldiers from violence. And so now you have Israeli soldiers dying, getting wounded, and they're returning home with PTSD, and they're probably going to do all sorts of crazy things in their society. So it's not going very well for them, and I think that's why you're starting to see these criticisms. Israel's paying a very heavy price, and all they have to do is stop being arrogant, think rationally, and say, this isn't sustainable. See, that's the difference, really, is that Netanyahu and his government insist that we don't have to actually actually engage in any meaningful dialogue. And that's actually why they're insisting on the Hannibal Directive, right? Which is, I know I said I wouldn't talk about it, but I might as well just throw it in a little bit right now. They are insisting that we don't want to give the Palestinians any leverage. We have complete power over them, and that's how we'll get all the land. That's how we'll get everything that we want. So by killing their own people and not allowing them to become hostages and then bargaining chips for Hamas or any other Palestinian group to use as leverage during negotiations, they can remove whatever little power Palestinians might be able to acquire. This is the arrogance of Netanyahu and the far right. Many could argue that actually it's all of Israel really at this point. They've become so extreme, but there are elements within Israeli society that are saying, why not engage in dialogue? Why not have a political solution to this crisis? But of course, we're not expecting that to actually happen. That's the big difference between them. Moving on, I want to show you this tweet by Max Blumenthal. He says, Israel's military gasses Israeli hostages to death after their families pleaded with the government not to use the tactic. This is an extension of the mass Hannibal orders given on October 7th. And what he's referring to is this post by an Israeli mother. Her son was held as a hostage, and she writes this in Hebrew, but don't worry, I have it translated here. And she says, the results of the investigation, essentially alluding to the death of her son, Ron was indeed murdered, not by Hamas. Think more in the direction of Auschwitz and the showers, but without Nazis and without Hamas as the cause. No accidental shooting, no first intentional murder, bombings with poisonous gases. Ron was kidnapped because of the criminal negligence of all the top officials of the army and the bloody government who gave an order to eliminate him in order to close an account with some terrorists from Jabalia. Oh yes, and they also found that he had several crushed fingers, apparently due to his desperate attempts to get out of the poison grave that buried him when he tried to breathe air but only breathed poison. My love, may I die in your place. What a nightmare you went through, death and terrible agony, and all on the orders of the Israel Defense Forces that you trusted so much and appreciated in the government cabinet. There is no future for this country if this is what they did to you, who abandoned you that Saturday. So what happened was he was held as a hostage in Gaza, apparently in a tunnel. You have hostages held in different places. Sometimes they're held in homes, sometimes they're held in tunnels, sometimes they're transported all over the place. And Israel, it was announced, if you remember very early on, that they were going to get the Hamas rats out of the tunnel by pumping it with seawater or poison gas. And they actually used it. And the families of the hostages pleaded with the government, please be careful with our family members, don't kill them. Of course, Israel didn't seem to care, and they knew very well that by poisoning the tunnels they could be killing their own people. Why did they know that? Because their families knew that. That's why their families were pleading with them, please don't do it, because you could kill our own family members. So if the families knew that, then the government definitely knew that. They did it anyway. Why? Because their priority is actually not the lives of the hostages. Their priority is completely crushing Hamas and destroying all of Gaza. At this point, I believe the Netanyahu government has essentially decided their lives don't matter. The interests of the state of Israel matters, and they believe their interests are actually to ethnically cleanse Gaza completely. So they view the hostages actually as an obstacle in their way that prevent them from accomplishing that task, and that's why they don't care and they're careless, and that's why they gassed this poor kid to death and he crushed his fingers trying to dig his way out. How disgusting is that? And here you can see the article, IDF fails to confirm Gaza hostages' cause of death. The mother claims it's poisoning. The mother of slain hostage Ron Sherman accused the IDF of poisoning her son to death inside a Jabalia tunnel. Okay, before we transition to Yemen, I just want to show you this clip of the destruction of Palestine University. This is one of the few universities left in Gaza. Of course, you can see it's pretty much already destroyed, but at least it's still standing. It could be renovated. But here you see they basically destroy the entire thing. There's no reason to believe that anyone is in there, not even Hamas, but they destroy it anyway. And in my view, this is just more evidence of Israel trying to leave nothing behind, okay, for the people of Gaza to return to. Their hope is that all the destruction and chaos will force the Palestinians to accept there's no life for us here in Gaza anymore. Therefore, we should just move to the Sinai or wherever they're willing to take us. And we know that Secretary Blinken went to the Middle East, he went to Egypt, he went to Saudi Arabia, he went everywhere and said, hey, can you take 100,000 Palestinians from Gaza? Can you take 200,000? And they all said, no, we're not taking any of them. Not because they don't want to help the Palestinian people like the Zionists say, but actually because they understand that doing that will make them look like traitors to the cause. And they don't want to do Israel's dirty work for them. So now what Blinken is doing, he's going all around Europe, asking Canada, well, I know that's not Europe, but asking Canada, asking Western Europe to each take Palestinians. And apparently they're having more success there, which is funny because the Zionists claimed, if we don't stop the people of Gaza here, they're gonna go all over the world and attack you guys. So actually, by us committing genocide in Gaza, we're defending Western Europe from the people of Gaza. Now they're asking the people of Western Europe to take the people of Gaza. So they're complete liars, and they're just continuing to expose themselves. Moving on now, I want to tell you about Yemen. So we know that it was announced the United States relists the Houthis as terrorists. So they were once considered terrorists under the Trump administration. Then they made peace with the Saudis. So Biden lifted that, and now they are putting it back. And they say it's because if they list them as a terrorist organization, then they can sever the relationship that the Houthis may have with whatever nations or groups, and that will prevent them from getting whatever equipment that they're using to attack ships in the Red Sea. This is a statement here, this tweet. I forget this U.S. official's name. I think it's John Kirby. He's a piece of garbage. I say that because he's just been giving the green light to commit genocide in Gaza. Anyway, he announced the U.S. has set a condition for the Houthis to remove them from the list of terrorist organizations. As reported by Reuters, according to a senior U.S. official, Washington classifies the Ansar Allah movement as a terrorist group. If the Yemenis stop their attacks in the Red Sea, Washington will consider revoking this classification. Well, in response, Ansar Allah, or the Houthis, responded, and they had a pretty baller statement, I'm not gonna lie. They said, the American classification will not deter us from our firm position in support of the Palestinians. There is no effectiveness on the ground for Washington's decision regarding our classification. The American classification will not deter us from our support for Palestine. We will not back down from our position in support of the Palestinian people. The recent American decision will only increase our adherence to our position in support of the Palestinians. What a statement. The people of Yemen are amazing, right? I mean, they're not afraid of anyone or anything, and they're like, this is the right thing to do. We do not care what the consequences are. Call us terrorists, bomb us, starve us, kill us. We don't care. We will not betray the Palestinian people. It almost makes you want to cry. It's so incredible. May God protect and reward these people. I'm not supporting them because now they're classified as terrorists, but really, that is a bold and powerful statement. So incredible. And then you have this statement by the Secretary General of the Hezbollah Brigades, Abu Hussein al-Hamidawi, to Ansar Allah. We renew our covenant and promise that we are of you and with you for as long as God wills. We say it so that the world can hear it. An attack on you from any country or entity, large or small, we will deal with it as a direct attack on us, and we will not be deterred by challenges, whatever their type or size, and from any party. I mean, the solidarity is like, wow, these are allies. You know, you have friends who betray you. These people will not let you down. These people will not betray you. Now, I know these are just words, but we've actually seen them take out these actions, and it's all for the people of Palestine. Doesn't that inspire you? Isn't that beautiful? I mean, these people are up against aircraft carriers and drones and F-16s and F-35s, and they're not afraid. They're not afraid. That's incredible. And this is an awesome image I just wanted to show you. Look at this baller, the OG Yemeni standing in the Red Sea with his sword. Like, nope, you're not gonna get past. That's incredible. I love to see it. So, and despite the announcement that they're gonna become classified as a terrorist group, the Houthis continued their attack, and it was announced today by the UK MTO. There was a warning. They received a report of an incident 60 nautical miles southeast of Aden in Yemen. Master reports vessel has been hit on the port side by an uncrewed aerial system. It reported there was a fire on board which has now been extinguished. Vessel and crew are safe and are proceeding to the next port of call. Vessels are advised to transit with caution and report any suspicious activity. The Houthis aren't backing down. They're not stopping. They don't care. Call us what you want. Do what you want to us. We're gonna continue trolling you until you people gain some sense. Remember, the Houthi position is what? Stop the genocide in Gaza. That's it. That's it. They're not asking for anything else. It's the most reasonable, rational, logical position you could take. Stop killing babies. Not that complicated, right? And they're willing to do the impossible, insurmountable, to try and achieve that. May God protect them. And I showed you guys this image the other day, but I thought I'd show it to you again because I think it just really, it's such a beautiful visualization of what the Yemenis are causing. It's so funny. It makes me laugh. But you can see from the port of Singapore, the blue line, traditionally, you know, it would only take them 8,500 nautical miles, a 26-day trip to get to Rotterdam, which is a very important port in Northern Europe in the Netherlands. But the Yemenis are making them go all the way south, and it, you know, increases the trip by like 25%. 50%. Now instead of 8,500 nautical miles, it's 11,800 nautical miles, and it increases it by 10 days, which is more fuel. It's just troll. The Yemenis are like, we're gonna troll you. And they're having success. Look at this. Militant attacks affect shipping movement. Freight container volumes through the Red Sea region have fallen by 65%. You know, on Twitter, I will see these conservative trolls who are like anti-Palestine, and they just troll. The Houthis are stupid. They're not doing anything. They're not achieving anything. Here you go. Yes, they are. That is why they're bombing them. That is why they're calling them terrorists. And that's why on the chart, you're seeing 65% drop off of expected shipping because of them. And insurance rates are rising, as we discussed yesterday. So yes, they are having an impact. It's so funny how they try to convince you that the move you're making, which is the best strategic move, they try to convince you that it's actually garbage. It's meaningless. The Houthis aren't achieving anything. Yeah, they are, buddy. Yeah, they are. And look at this. This was an announcement by the CEO of Saudi oil giant Aramco. He was in Davos. There's this big World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and all the rich big ballers go there, and the government officials, and they talk, you know, all the things that us plebs are not allowed to talk about because we're too poor, and we have apparently no decision. We're not allowed to participate in any discussions regarding our future. We have to just accept what they discuss in Davos. But anyway, prolonged attacks by the Houthis on ships would lead to a shortage of tankers. So this is going to affect oil prices. This is going to affect the movement of oil. Now they say not in the short term, but in the long term, it could be a problem. And according to the Houthis, they're not gonna stop anytime soon, and neither are the Israelis. The Israelis saying they're gonna fight for another year in Gaza. So it sounds like the Houthis are gonna troll the Red Sea for another year. And that's why it seems like the US and the UK and the West are really trying to get the Red Sea under control. I mean, they have all the power and resources to do it. So I don't know how creative the Houthis can get, but they are a brave people and they're gonna keep trying. I thought this was funny. More ships flagged no link with Israel to avoid Houthi attacks. Because remember, the Houthis said, we're gonna attack ships going to Israel or owned by Israel or affiliated with Israel, right? And now they're expanding that. They're gonna attack Western ships because they're like calling them terrorists and they're gonna bomb them. So Houthis like, okay, fine, we'll attack you too. But you have Chinese ships and you have all these other ships from different countries. They're like, we have nothing to do with the Israelis. And you can see what they do is they put out like a message, right? They're constantly in communication, reporting their location and things of that nature. So you can see here are some examples. Pacific Merit says no link Israel. SM Osprey says no relation to Israel. Ping Hai says CNCW, I guess they're saying we're Chinese, no link Israel. Athena, no Kant Israel. India, no con with Israel. Oh, okay. Well, then they gotta get hit. No, I don't think that's what they're saying. But then Leda says nothing with Israel. So it's so funny. None of these countries want to be affiliated with Israel in any way because they don't want to get struck. You know, I want to add, actually, there was something interesting that I saw that I think is quite important. I don't want to open up a discussion about global economics right now, but I'll try, you know, to summarize as quickly as I can. But essentially in 2008, look how far I have to take you back. 2008. In 2008, when the global economic crisis took place, when you had this massive recession, many would argue is a depression, okay? It was just an epic crash. The way the United States and the Western world got out of this crash was they decided to just print a ton of money. They printed a ton of money. They gave it to all the banks, very low interest to zero interest. And the banks didn't even have to pay a lot of it back because of a process called quantitative easing. So about $4 trillion that the banks were supposed to give back to the Federal Reserve, they were just forgiven. They didn't even have to give it back. So you had this influx of dollars, and this boosted the economy. All of a sudden, there was all this economic productivity. That was a short-term solution. In the long term, what that did, as you know, the more you add to the supply, the less valuable it becomes. So they've built this economic activity and progress on quicksand. It's a shaky, weak foundation. So they've printed this money and have increased inflation. And that's why if you look back 20, 30 years, the dollar used to buy you this, and 20 or 30 years later, and the dollar is like way cheaper, way weaker, can barely buy you anything compared to a dollar 20 or 30 years ago. And that's because of the inflation. Now, when COVID happened, you had an extreme economic crash. And how did they solve that one? They decided to print even more money. Well, when they did this, they injected so much cash into the economy that was unnecessary, really, because a lot of these big corporations took that and pocketed it. When they had money saved up, a lot of these companies, they could have just dug into their savings, but they all took advantage of the free money. And as a result, the inflation got out of control. So what has the US and the West been having to do for the last few years? They've had to start raising interest rates. So now people are borrowing less money because the interest rates are higher. Do you want to buy a home and pay 10% interest, or would you rather wait for when the interest loans are cheap? So this has slowed economic activity down, and they've tried to do it in a gradual way, and they've been able to get inflation somewhat under control, but it's like putting a ceiling over a balloon that won't stop growing. The moment they stop raising the interest rates and they reduce the interest rates, inflation will take off again. Okay, it's entering a cycle of like just endless inflation, which is very bad. This is how societies are destroyed. Like this happened in Rome, this happened in so many different empires. They would just inflate and cheapen the value of their currency until the point where it had no value, and people abandoned that currency and they stopped having faith in it, and that leads to a collapse, and it's very, very dangerous. Well, the US is in this position, the Western world is in this position. You could argue the entire world is in this position, really, because everyone engaged in this behavior, but the US especially, and the US has the most to lose because they're top dog. What they're arguing what the Houthis will do, the Houthis, this little group in Yemen, what do they have to do with the powerful forces at the top, right? But these little Houthis in Yemen are at the perfect time applying pressure on the supply chain, and will force these people, because of the hit on economic activity and the rising of consumer goods, is going to affect their ability to remove the high interest rates, which means they're delaying the economic recovery, and they could actually be contributing to the continued inflation of the dollar. So the Houthis are striking at the perfect time. I'm not saying they're going to cause the global economic crash. I'm just saying they might. So it's really, really funny. It's really, really interesting. Moving on to this final point, I want to show you, this is something I saw today. Now, this is old news, but I'm just seeing it, so it's not old to me. But south of India, 2 Israeli ships were hit. So this is nowhere near the Red Sea. 2 Israeli ships south of India were hit, supposedly by Iran. Now, whether Iran affiliated groups or the military itself, I don't know, but they hit 2 Israeli ships south of India. So Israeli ships they're in trouble, man, because everything comes from Asia. So everyone is sailing to China, to Taiwan, to Singapore, through Indonesia. They have to cross through this area. And what Iran and the Yemenis are saying basically is, we're gonna give Israel the hardest time. And this is the strategy. This is why when people say, why isn't anyone going to war with Israel? Why isn't Iran escalating? Why does Hezbollah keep talking? Why don't they actually fight them? It's in no one's interest to go directly to war. What Iran, and I'm not trying to praise Iran here, I know a lot of people have issues with Iran, but I have to say, it's a master class of a gradual and contained escalation. They are raising the stakes slowly on Israel. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Little cuts, little cuts. The Israelis want them to escalate. The Israelis want Hezbollah to attack them. They want Iran to attack them. Why? Because then Israel will drag the United States and force them to fight. And the United States has the firepower to destroy all of them. That's not in the US's interest either. But that's what Israel wants. They want to escalate this. They need the war to get out of control because they want to save themselves, Netanyahu's government. You see how like arrogant and crazy these people are? They want to destroy everything to save themselves. So they want to escalate. Iran is not stupid. They are trying to raise the stakes and apply pressure by supporting the Houthis. Now it's unclear if Iran gave the Houthis the word, or if the Houthis are autonomous and they say, yeah, we get support from Iran, but we do what we want when we want. So it's not clear, but the point is the Houthis are applying pressure in the Red Sea. Iran is applying pressure where they can without escalating to a dangerous point that would destroy themselves and give Israel exactly what they want. So it's a master class, regardless of what you think about them. I know a lot of people don't like Iran, fine, but you cannot deny that this is a master class in gradual escalation. So that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.